Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the latest episode of Hardcore Photography. I'm your host, Mike, and I'm here with my good friend, Sticky Rick.
Oh, what a pain in the ass.
that's Skype for you, man. Notorious. Not as bad as Anchor, but they talk about it all the time. People go, they talk about how it is semi-unstable. When I'm editing out, when our voices turn into that robotic drag. Yeah, I'm editing a lot of that out. I don't want that coming through unless it has to, but what happens is as soon as that goes down, I have to edit, and when I edit that out, then I have to go back and listen to the whole section to make sure that what I edited out still makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of a pain in the ass, but whatever. We were talking about what makes a song great.
About the guitar solo from that Neil Schon used, the tone he used on the Escape LP. Now, obviously, he used, Marshall stacks and all that for all the rhythm work.
Yeah.
When it came to the solos, and this might be the reason this amp became such a gem amongst collectors, Roland Cube.
Oh, Roland Cube's classic.
And it might be a classic because of that.
No, I didn't know he did that. Well, see, the thing is that among harmonica players, there's only a few solid state amps that, well, the term, when I say respect, I use that facetiously because there's really no reason for it. But one of the few amps that gets respect that's not tube is a Roland Cube. Because the Roland Cube, the Mustang, I think some of the Black Star stuff does, but yeah, the Roland Cube is pretty well respected for what it is. Oh, and the Pignose. Yeah, well, Pignose is a legend, so I don't exactly know why, but but yeah.
Well, I just now granted, being fans of that music, we probably have Journey songs outside of that album that we like plenty more than that stuff. Mostly because it was just seriously overplayed.
Well, yeah, because the guy, it's like Van Halen when you listen to, it's like, you suck, and then you get a hold of one of the albums and you go, damn, how come that shit didn't make it on the radio? And it's like they took the most poppy crap, vinyl filling junk and put it on the radio. And well, we know why, because most people have no freaking taste.
Well, yeah. That being said, my point of that was that when 90% of the world thinks of Journey anymore, Don't Stop Believing's their go-to song. Well, it's really the only song they have that stands out. Granted, I love a lot of their music, mostly the stuff that came before that album, but that song still gets airplay like nobody's business. And the fact is, the damn guitar solo was played on at the time, probably less than $100 amp.
At that time it was probably about a $30 amp, and we still couldn't afford it. But I mean, now it's different because of because of inflation. But at the time, gear was untouchable for us. That's why we were lucky. We played Gorillas and we played Japanese guitars and basses, and we were grateful for that. When I say Gorilla, for those who don't know, that's the infamous Gorilla amplifier line that a lot of guitarists started with, and a lot of basses, because bass at the time was very young and there was not a lot of gear, and so the only amps that you could really get were either SVTs, which would cost you $2,000 even back then, or the Gorilla 50B, which had the infamous funk switch. Yep. I still have it. By the way, it's in my garage right now. And
no way.
Yes, and the fucker still works. That thing is bulletproof, man. I should break that thing out and go to town on it.
Yeah, well, it's funny you were talking about solid state amps that have that are people kind of, as far as solid state heads that people respect, that you can pull one out and play respectable. The Roland Jazz.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that, because that girl that came and bought that Blues Junior that I was selling, we were talking, and she had mentioned, when I was talking to her, she was saying that she normally uses a Roland Jazz Chorus. I'm like, son of a bitch, that thing, that's a 220. This girl couldn't have weighed 115 pounds. It was nuts. Yep. This combo is so for those who don't know, this combo is so freaking big that it has wheels on it. Yep. And that amp is not meant to be moved. That amp, it's like a piano. It goes with a stage, and when you get there, there's an amp for you. You plug in and you go to town. That is not a mobile amp. That's like a bassist running an SBT Pro, where you got what is it? I can't remember if it was 4.8 or 6.8, but 10, right? Yeah, the cabinet for the SVT. I can't remember the comp. Yeah, I think it was like an 610 or an 810 or some crazy freaking thing like that. And so that rig weighed a freaking ton. So Joe Schmo Dumbass did not use that rig because it was freaking impossible. You had to have a moving truck to move it. And it's the same thing with the Jazz Chorus. Jazz Chorus, that's a legend. Yeah, that is a legend. That amplifier is, especially if you're into jazz guitar or that kind of style from way back that does not require that heavy crunch. Yeah, Jazz Chorus is a legend.
But funny you say that. A jazz, what they call it, the Jazz Solo, which is the head version of that amp.
I'm not familiar.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know they broke it down. Well, it makes sense, but
I think it's called the Roland Jazz Solo. It's a 100-watt head.
Should I have to check that out?
Or 200-watt head, I think, because when I started learning about watts ratings, all of it seemed ridiculous in the end.
It is. It's not the correct. It's not the correct way to evaluate a head or evaluate an amplifier.
But anyways, you were saying if you were into that, non-distorted music. My point is, the head was George Lynch's head of choice.
Really? What?
All those Dokken albums we love, that's a Roland Jazz solo.
I just assumed it was all Marshall stuff. I didn't know that. You learned something new.
Another famous user of that amp, at least the first album, I know he switched to Marshall, either Marshall or Mesa for the second album. But the first LA Guns album, all solid state.
Really? I would never have thought that. Huh.
Yeah. It's one of those amps. It's, in fact, I think George Lynch even still uses, Roland's. I know they made the Lynch box for him years ago, which is a, amp head that you, can insert and remove, modules for different preamp circuits.
Huh. I didn't know that. Okay. Okay.
Just, my point being, the most unusual equipment can still make some of the best art that's out there.
Well,
and we've said it a million times on this show that it's not about your equipment. It's about your ability.
For those who don't know, those who are considerably younger than us, back in the 80s and early 90s, the Marshall amps were the standard until, there were some people that using Boogie equipment and some other things. Sure, absolutely. Of course, there was some Fender stuff, but generally, at least in the style of music that we listened to, which would have been Dokken. That's why we speak of George Lynch and LA Guns and Rat and Poison and Cinderella and Snow White and White Tiger and all that stuff. We assumed that they all used a Marshall amplification because that was the de facto the Marshall, what is it, the 50 watt head or 100 watt head with the two 412 cabinets. That was the de facto lineup. But here's the thing, I believe now that you're telling me this, and I've always kind of suspected this, that a lot of that was look, and that a lot of that was for stage, and that in the studio they were not doing that. If anybody knows, the Fabulous Thunderbirds. Few people know this because when we knew the Fabulous Thunderbirds, they were doing poppy kind of slightly blues, and that would be Wrap It Up and Tough Enough, which was there was no harmonica, there was not really blues. It was kind of like a jumpy blues.
They were about as blues as ZZ Top is blues. I don't care what
correct. They were
not a blues band.
Yeah. They had, and they followed the same line as ZZ Top, where they transitioned. Well, actually, ZZ Top was a country western band to begin with. Few people know that. And then they moved into some crazy stuff off the Eliminator album, like TV dinners and just crazy stuff. And then they moved into now they're doing a lot more bluesy stuff. But same thing with Fabulous Thunderbirds. But the thing that a lot of people or I did not know until much later is that the singer, the frontman Kim Wilson, is a harmonica player, and apparently he's pretty well respected in blues. So on stage, he either used a preamp, mic amplifier, namely the ARC preamp or the Behringer amp. No, I think he used an ARC preamp. Very not what you would consider typical blues equipment, and he would go into the PA. Then the last I heard, he was using a booster pedal, the Exotic EP booster, and then he would plug it into a Blues DeVille amplifier, and he would bypass the preamp section and go immediately into the power amp section. So he was using the pedal as a preamp, and he was using the power amp section of the Fender Hot Rod DeVille as the power amp and speaker cabinet. The thing is that in the studio, he does not do that. In the studio, he uses some kind of a Gibson, an old Gibson amplifier. I don't know what he does. So the reason I drug that line out is because, I had always believed in the beginning that a lot of those people, they're playing live and they're using these huge, Marshall amplifiers, but I knew that could not be recorded reliably inside the studio because you're not going to be able to get that crank, that breakup, within a studio. It's too small. That's for like a large venue kind of place. So they had to use some sort of downsized, controllable, sound reproduction. And I suspected that they would use some kind of, solid state because solid state was more, controllable. I suspected that. I had no proof. And, I was just, I can't believe that they're using 100-watt Marshall stacks inside the studio. It makes no sense.
I came about my search on the Journey stuff because when I found out who produced it, because when I was they always tell you to match when you're trying to master your tracks or even mix them, listen to a piece of music that you're really familiar with, that you like the tone of it. Mm-hmm. So I started using Paul Stanley's 1978 solo album. I always thought what great guitar tones, everything about that production is really good in my opinion. So I looked at who mixed it, and it turns out this guy named Mike Stone, who came to prominence during his engineering work with Queen. I forget the guy who did Queen. He's got, Roy Thomas Baker. Is that the guy who did Queen? Or is famous for producing Queen? I think that's who it was.
I have yeah, okay.
But anyways, this guy Mike Stone was famous for, coming up with, how to produce engineer and produce, their vocal harmonies. He's responsible for the whole Bohemian Rhapsody sound. So from there, he, right about the